Hello everybody and welcome to Mondoid, your one-stop shop for all things Project Zomboid, and this week, go fish! That and my excitement to be back recording. Hello everybody, so go fish! The first blog in a little while where I feel like there's a whole lot to talk about, or at least a whole lot to digest, which is awesome. There's a lot here to look at and a lot to be excited about, more specifically. So, without further ado, let's dive in, shall we? So right away they're talking about, hey, where are things at as far as development in general? We're waiting on a lot of things, particularly Build 25, the new cooking system, etc., etc. And they do touch upon what the team's doing, which is good. Particularly RJ's new fishing system, which is what the main blog's about, which is awesome. We also have Easy Pickens, who's kind of like the bug fixer as of late, which is kind of what he does, which is awesome. He's just fixing things after thing after thing after thing, which is making the build smoother and better for people to play when it's officially released, even though you can go play the build right now. We call it the official release that way. When for the people who don't want to go into that special test, they can go do their own thing and go play it themselves. If that makes sense to you. We also have, let's see, one of the exciting things is that Lemmy, or Chris, or whatever you want to call him, is really working on NPCs right now. He's, head into NPCs. You can read this right here. He's in the world of NPCs where he shall probably remain for some time until they're ready to start showing stuff. Doesn't mean we're going to see anything soon, but what that does mean is that it sounds like they're back, or at least Chris is dedicating himself to NPCs. Not that he wasn't dedicated prior, but to know that he's kind of diving in freaking neck deep back to NPCs is incredibly exciting for me to hear. That's something that, we've been waiting to hear for a while, and I'm really excited about it, so we'll see how that ends up going. Very, very happy about that. Let's see, who else is doing stuff? Mash is working on the map, while Andy is working on some new animations. What sounds cool is that Andy is actually doing combat animations right now to make it feel more visceral. So I'm actually really excited to see what those animations are going to be. Combat itself is pretty visceral right now. It's just the nature of the beast with these types of games. So what animations he's going to be adding, tweaking, or fixing, or changing completely will be something that I'm looking forward to. But that's just the introduction of the blog. The big bulk of the blog is kind of what RJ is working on. So one of the things that he's been working on is a new cooking system. And they're essentially asking how is it going. And the first feedback from the testers was actually pretty good. The system's way more fun and a lot easier than the old one. With a little creativity, you can make a lot more cool stuff. It's not perfect, and there's still bugs, but they're fairly small ones. Again, I've talked about the new cooking system before in great detail because they've talked about it in great detail, and it is pretty friggin' cool. The idea behind it is great. It's genius. If you didn't hear about it before, go back 3 or 4 weeks, and they do a blog on it, and I do a lot of talking about it. So if you want to go get a quick rundown as to what it does, I highly suggest just go watching one of my Mondoids 3 or 4 weeks back, and you can get an idea of how it works. Generally speaking, it just adds a lot of depth to the game and adds a lot of depth to the cooking system. It makes being the cook of a party, the way I look at it is it's made specifically for multiplayer. It obviously is good in single player too, but it's really good in multiplayer because you can kind of focus on being the cook in your survival party, and you become very integral and important to your survival as a party. And if they lose the cook, that means your efficiency with food is going to become way, way, way worse. So big thumbs up, as I've said, to the cooking system. But one of the cool things that he's adding is the fishing system. So the fishing mod has been around for a while, and now that RJ is kind of part of the team, it does look like he's going to take that mod and implement it into the game proper. And I'm not going to go through all the questions. I'm going to kind of run down the basics of how fishing works and the ideas behind it and why I think it's really exciting and what I think they're doing that's kind of genius, and I think it's going to work really well. So first and foremost, fishing is going to be a skill like carpentry, like any of those things. The more you do it, the better you get at it. The better you get at it, the better fish you're going to catch. So how's it going to work? Well, it's going to be RPG-ish, where you're going to cast out a line, you're going to wait. It's not skill-based. You don't have to click anything when a bob goes down. It's going to be, the way they explain it is very Zelda-style, and you're going to be able to fish and catch food that way. So the question inevitably comes up is, well, won't this just be broken? Aren't you going to, isn't this going to be an infinite food source? How are you going to prevent a player from just living off of fish forever? And that's an important question, I think. So what they talk about, and I think this is good, is the idea of overfishing. So if you fish in the same spot over and over and over and over again, eventually the fish population is going to be lessened in that area, and you're going to have to give it time to repopulate, which is good. Now, single player, it doesn't really make that much sense because, you're not going to catch so many fish that you're going to kill the population off. But for game balancing reasons, it makes sense because, I've said this before and I'll say it again. With survival sims like this that are treading realistic in gameplay, you have to kind of draw a line in the sand and say, okay, for the sake of gameplay and fun, in balance, we have to just ignore the realistic side of it and go for and do this for the sake of gameplay and balance and implementation. So the idea of fish becoming lessened over time, though may not be the most realistic, especially in single player, makes sense balance-wise for the game. Outside of that, the other implementations for balancing features is you're looking at being able to snapping your line, for instance. You could lose your line, you could lose your pole, could break. All these things could happen, and that also depends on the size of the fish, how often you use the line, all that good stuff. So that's going to feed into and directly seep into your looting runs. You're going to be looking for supplies, and if you don't have much in the ways of fishing supplies, obviously you're not going to be able to fish as much, and if you run into a string of bad luck where your line breaks over and over and over again, you could quickly run out of fishing supplies. So that infinite food source may not be that infinite, and it kind of has this ripple effect where if it becomes part of your normal looting run, and you now have to make a decision between a fishing line and an axe or fishing supplies and an axe, you might end up taking the axe over the fishing supplies, so you might not be able to go fishing that day. And it's going to create these situations, the emergent story of you having to make difficult decisions on what you're going to take that day and what you're not. And a day without fish could be a day you go hungrier. And the other thing is they're talking about timing as well. How long is it going to take to catch a fish? They don't want it to become so easy and so quick that it's super easy to catch a bunch of fish and catch a lot of food, but they also don't want it to take so long and be so boring the player's just going to be standing there the entire time doing nothing. So that's going to be something that is going to be balanced over time, especially in its most early stages of implementation. That's going to be something that's going to be play tested over and over and over again. But it's good to see this in because the more food sources you have in the game, the more survival options you have. Because suddenly fishing means now you can have even more of a reason to go live in the woods because looting is not going to be something that's going to be utterly necessary. And the better you become at fishing, the bigger the fish you can catch, and the bigger your fish you can catch, the more competition there is between you and other players, whether in multiplayer or scoreboards. It kind of adds a lot of fun little things through it. So I love the idea that this fishing thing is going to be brought in. I think fishing and hunting are going to add a whole lot of depth to not only just the food system, but the survival nature that the game brings out. Because now, with these new systems out, you're going to have to make tough choices. Whether you're going to live in the woods, whether you're going to live in the city. What are you going to grab when you loot? What aren't you going to grab when you loot? Again, just with these particular types of games, survival and so on, when you implement something, the developers or the players might think, well, it's only going to affect this little thing. But I just brought up, the option or the idea that there's going to be a ripple effect through the entirety of your gameplay through just looting decisions alone. One of the most basic features in the game. Now you have to make a new choice, especially if you don't have a lot of carrying capacity. Maybe you weren't lucky enough to come across a backpack and a duffel bag in the first week, and now all you have to carry stuff is like one of those little plastic shopping bags. Now you definitely have to decide, I can only take an axe or these fishing supplies without being weighed down, and I'm in an area that's full of zombies, and to even get into this building, it took me a lot of backtracking and long roundabout ways to get here. So if I'm going to leave and I'm going to only be able to walk because I'm over encumbered because I took both, that could be the end of my character. So again, adding those decisions, adding that kind of checklist of supplies that you want and you need, and trying to decide which one do you need more of the two, adds depth and challenge to the game that something as simple as a fishing system you may not have thought would added that kind of depth. And that's what I love about these kinds of games. It was the same thing when they added rain to the game. Now suddenly you have to make a decision, are you going to go out or are you not going to go out, and blah blah blah. So that's Mondoid for you. That's been I'm excited. The fishing system itself is really exciting, but to hear that all the developers are working on all these cool things and to hear that NPCs are kind of back in full swing with Chris is exciting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you're one of those once-a-weekers, as always, I'll see you next week. And if you're a regular, I will definitely see you later today. I am so happy to be back from PAX and recording again. And as always, I will see all of you next time. Bye-bye.